Hi everybody. This story is pretty much as old as time. Most of the migrated application came from WinForms and are designed based on the WinForm capabilities that existed when they were created. And in a lot of times, organizations will reach out to an external designer and ask him to create a conceptual design of the way the application should look. Now, unfortunately, the conceptual design would probably come back as something that looks like this. Okay? And the reason that this is a problem is because the external designer is not aware of the limitations that WinForms application have. He actually designs application according to reusable components that are used today on the web, and he thinks it's really, really easy to create, but trust me, this is extremely hard to create using WinForms. And what I want to show you today is a different approach, which means let's leverage the strengths of HTML and CSS and whatever within our application. Okay, so first, let's take a look. We have our Northwind application, which is over here. And what I'm going to do next here, I'm going to do a first commit. And I'm going to start by creating a folder. Go solution. Add new folder demo. And in it, I'm going to create a file called a new item. Let's make it an HTML file. HTML page. demo.html. Okay, cool. And let's open it in the browser. Okay, so now we have on our browser here the demo.html, which is okay. Obviously, we haven't done anything here. I can, make some changes here. I can take this browser, put here on the right. So I'm going to make some text over here, refresh it over here, and I got it. Now, I'm not really good at designing, and I'm not really good at HTML, but luckily I have ChatGPT. So let's ask it to create, please create a cool dashboard in HTML and CSS that will have 4 buttons, orders, customers, and what other buttons do we have on our menu? I really don't remember. Let's open it up. Let's run it and see. So we have customers, products, orders, and orders report. Perfect. So customers, orders, this products, and order report. Please use fancy animations and CSS tricks that are hard to do in WinForms. Please also add a let's start with that. Later we'll take it from there. So ChatGPT to the rescue. Let's see what it can do. So here it's writing my HTML for me. Let's take this and copy it away. Copy, go to our demo HTML, paste, save, and see what we've got. Okay. Let's say that it's okay. Yeah, but I want more pizzazz. So please add some cool rotation animation on hover, and also add click events that will fire an alert with the name of the button. And let's see what it says now. Copy it, paste it here, and refresh our browser. Okay, now we have some kind of cool rotation. Yay! Cool. Let's say that this is cool. I don't know, just to show you that it's possible. And let's also ask it to add an input at the bottom. So please add an input at the bottom where I can type my customer ID and later show the customer name. And also create a chart, also add a chart of I don't know, number of orders per year. So here we are, and we have this code, and this video is going to be longer than I planned, but okay. The next thing I want to do is put this on our app. Okay, so to do that, I'm going to add a new item, which is going to be a standard UI controller. I'm going to call it new menu. And I'm going to make it fit to MDI. and I'm going to run it on application start. New demo dot new menu dot run. So here we have our new menu. Great. Now I want to display this HTML page over it, and to do that I'm going to add a new NuGet package that is called Sharp. And we want to get the WinForms version. And while it's downloading, we're going to go to Sharp on GitHub to see what they say. Sharp. Let's go there. Here is Sharp. This is the website. Pretty cool. I really want just the quick start, so let's go there. And quick start for .NET framework, which is great. That's what I'm looking for. And it really wants me to read the docs, but I don't care. So yeah, you get back to that later and do read it properly. But this is basically the code that we need to display our browser. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to head over to our new menu.view. I'm going to add a few imports or usings. And I'm going to add these 2 lines of code over here. Okay. So I've added the browser control onto my project and added to the controls of these forms. And if I run it right now, we will see Google, which is cool. And if I run it using the path that I've just created for our HTML file, we will see this in our code. Now this is getting cooler. Great. Now here's the thing. We want to fire events from the HTML back into my code and do cool things with it. Okay? And this is where it starts to get tricky, but also I think very, very interesting. So let's have a look and see where that takes us. So the first thing I'll do again is research the docs a little bit, and since I've been here before, I know where I'm going, but I really recommend that you read these docs. I'm going to go to the Poco Param example, and what we can see actually over here is that they're defining a class with custom methods, okay, and then they're registering it in the browser, and eventually in the browser they're actually running it. Okay, so let's see how we can do that with our code. So I'm going to create a class new menu helper. Okay, just going to be a class, and it's going to have a public void or public string even hello string text. It's going to return hello plus text. I think this is a good way to represent two-way communication between us and that code over there. So here we go. And what I want to do next is start doing this code to register the task. Now, before I do that, it's important to know that you can very easily get the browser's developer tools, and it's quite useful. So I strongly recommend you do that. And so for while you develop, I'm going to say here browser loading state changed. Okay, actually I'm going to do just yeah, I don't like too many lines of code. And I'm going to say here var loaded equals false. If not loaded, then browser dev tools and loaded equals true. So now when I run my code, we will have the developer tools of Chrome with us. Now my screen is huge, so they're a bit big, but we can see them over here, and we can do cool things with them, which we will. Cool. You can see how it all responds to my HTMLs and everything, so it really, really is cool. Now, let's start implementing the functionality. So, what I want to do first, I want to see the tools in the browser. Okay, so we have our nice little helper, and I want to see it in the browser. I want to use it in the browser. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to copy this line of code, And I'm going to copy this line of code and adjust it. And let's see what it means. I'm going to call it helper, just because I don't have original names, and I'm going to call it new menu helper. Okay, so this will register a member in the JavaScript. This is going to be called the helper, and I'll be able to use it. Now, next, let's look back at the code over here. We need to call something called ceph-sharp bind object async. Okay, and after that, we're going to have our service, just like they have it over here. So let's head over to our HTML. And when everything loads, something like pretty much here, I'm going to add this line of code, and I'm going to say then. And this is pretty much means I'm ready. Now, instead of saying mess service, I'm going to say helper, because it's the same name that we have defined over here. And let's run this. Okay, it's running. Now let's bring over the developer tools. And let's see if we have helper. We actually have helper, and we can call hello, send it a name, and we see that it returns something called a promise. Okay, and this is very common in JavaScript to return a promise because we don't want to freeze the UI while it's running. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to say await helper.hello Noam, and I'm going to get hello Noam. So when I made this line of code, it called the .NET, released the UI so the UI will not be stuck and animations would continue, called the method in .NET, and it was run. When it was completed, it went to the next line and printed the hello Noam, printed the result. So we have a way to communicate back and forth with the code, which is kind of cool. Let's do the same with clicking on the buttons here. Okay, let's do a button click. So here we're going to say public bool a button was clicked, string text. Okay, and white bool void. And then I'm going to do mbox to get a .NET message box with the text. And in our HTML, what we're going to say is when there's the click code, which is somewhere over here, show alert. So we're going to say helper dot a lower letter, because they do that automatically. Don't ask me now why. Button name. And let's see how that works for us. And we got the message box now from .NET, which means we can pretty much do anything, which I think is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and say that if the button is orders, call orders. So if text is orders, new orders dot orders dot run. Now, obviously not going to be that easy, but bear with me. So let's run it. And if I click orders, what happened was is that it actually opened in another window, and only once it's closed, it gave me the orders. And the reason this happens is a threading issue. The original application runs in one thread, whereas the handling of the commands that are being called is run on a completely different thread. So we need to account for that, and let me show you how we do that. First, let's understand the problem. Yeah, big problem, it's stuck. So let's head back and kill it. Okay, and let's put a breakpoint here when the constructor is run, and here. So one here and one there. Now, once we are here, if we'll query the current context, we're going to see a context with two active tasks, which is the application and our program with the menu on it. And if we continue running it and then click on a button, we see that we are on a different context that doesn't have any active tasks. And we can actually look at the Firefly box context, active context, to see that there are two contexts active. One with the two tasks where we started, and one we are on now. So we need to move the call from our thread to the other thread, because we want to maintain the stack rules that we used so far. So that would require a little bit of code, and let me just write it here. First thing I want to do is have using Firefly box because I'm lazy. And then I'm going to say context current equals a context current. So when we will create the helper, it will actually store the context that we created it on. And then I will create a private t run t that will run a task which will have a func of t what. Return what. Okay, that's pretty simple. We receive a function and we run it, but now we want to run it on a different thread and maintain the result. So we're going to say here var result equal default t. Okay, what do you want? T is type, which is not given the given context. Default t. Okay, and then I'm going to have a new current. So the thread that I want to run on dot begin invoke, and it will run an action for me. So whatever happens between this and this will run on the original context. And here I'll say result equals what, and eventually return result. So what I've done over here is essentially I've caused the code to run, okay, in the correct thread. Whatever I'll send as a lambda here will run in the correct thread. So if I'll do here run, okay, and just return false because I need to return something for it. And run should have a capital R, and semicolon is also important. This will now run in the correct thread. So let's do that. So we have our UI, and orders will run orders, and customers in products and order report will soon work. Great. So let's just adjust our code. Obviously, I will load it later to GitHub, so don't feel like you are need to copy everything I do as I do it. Let's just adjust it a little bit. I'm going to move the run higher. Let's change this into a switch. Text. Case. Orders. Then run orders. Break. Case customers, run new order, new customers, show customers, case products, run new products dot show products, and case customer orders report, run new orders dot orders print orders dot run, and break. Cool. So let's run this and see that it works. Products runs products, orders report doesn't work because I misspelled orders, customer works, and orders works. So you see how we have a very compelling dashboard with HTML capabilities, and it's fully integrated into our app. Nobody can feel that this is not our app, that this is a web app, even though essentially it is. Okay. Let's complete this a little bit more. Just make sure that the order report works because we want things to work correctly. So now the order report works and printed in the print preview. Great. The next thing I want to do is get the customer name when the customer name types the correct customer name. So for that, we're going to do public string get customer name with string customer ID. Okay, and for the sake of being careful, I'm always going to use run. So I'm going to return run, and here I'm going to say var c equals new models customers, and return get value of customer company name where customer ID is equal to customer ID. Okay, so now I have this method over here. And then we need to have a look at our HTML. Let's take our code here. So in the console, we will say helper dot get customer name, ALFKI, for example. And it doesn't exist. ALFKY doesn't exist. I don't know the customers that do exist. Let's go and hijack an ID. We are still getting a null, which is interesting. Let's put our breakpoint over here and see what happens. Go to our console, run this. We see that we're getting to this code, and we see that this code, yay, Visual Studio is stuck. No, okay, perfect. Get customer ID does return it. But it returned it as a text format, and we need it as a string format. So we are going to do here toString. No. Okay, I got it. Sorry. Here's the problem. Our code has actually ended. Okay. This method is completed before the get value was executed. Let me show you that. I'm going to put a breakpoint here. Okay, and I'm going to put a breakpoint here. And if we are running correctly, this should happen before this, but unfortunately this will happen before this. Let's see that. So I'm going to say here in our console, await helper get customer name ALFKI, and we see that it got to the result before it got here. And that's because the begin invoke method is a threading method that is designed not to wait, and we actually want it to wait. So let's add here a var wait, new system threading manual reset event, and we're gonna wait for it, and we're only gonna set it once our method has been completed. Okay, and so let's go ahead and run this. So now if we head over to our console, await helper.get customer name ALFKI, and we got the name, which I think is cool. Let's go and integrate that into our HTML. So we're gonna go over to our HTML and say over here customer name. So we're gonna make this function an async function because we want to use a wait in it. And I'm gonna say here that wait, let's keep this there. Yeah. So I want to say over here await helper.get customer name, and I'm going to send it a customer ID. Okay. Now in order to use await, I need to tag the function as async, so I'm going to do that over here. Let's see that it works. So now if I put here ALFKI and tab, I got the name from the application. And let's check out another code. Let's use that. Another code, and I got the name from the application. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a double click here, and it will open a selection window from the application. So let's see how we do that. First of all, we want to probably listen to the double click, and let's see how we do that. So we have click on click. Let's see if we can add on double click. On double click. Okay, then we call it select customer. So we're gonna add a function over here with all of our nice friends. Async function select customer, and we're gonna hold the customer ID field, and then we're going to call our helper. Okay, so we're gonna say await helper dot select customer. That will receive the customer ID value, the current value of the customer, and return the result to the customer ID. And we will hold this element here. Okay, so we now hold the element, and then we'll say that the element dot value is equal to the return value from what we've done. Okay, so here we have the element, we take its value, send it to the select helpers, and here we return it. And let's add an alert here also to see that it works. We are here. Let's see that first of all the double click works. We are here. Cool. And in our new menu helper, we're gonna add a get customer, a select customer method. So new menu helper, public string select customer, that we're gonna get a string customer ID, and it will return run. Now our show customers gets a text column, so we're gonna add a text column here with the value of the original customer ID, and then we're gonna call the new customers show customers dot run with the text column, and we'll return tc dot value dot toString dot trim. Let's see if that works. So now when I'm here, if I double click, we are here. It opened the selection window. I'll click OK, and it updated it. And we just need to update the customer name. So let's just do that. Head over to our HTML, remove the alert, and call the show customers names afterwards, so it will update the customer name. F5 or double click, select the customer, we got the name, double click, select another customer, we got the name, it's working. Perfect. The last thing I want to do is populate this chart over here, just because it's so cool and I really cannot resist this. Okay, so let's see what do we want to do with this. How does this work? Let's check out our HTML. And in our HTML, we can see here that the Windows onload function is running and setting all of this. And we see here that it has room for the years and room for the data. Okay, and we can change those. And we want to get these values from our application. Okay, so let's start building these values. Okay, and what we are going to do is we are going to the new menu helper, and we're going to say here public. Let's create a type for it. Class that will have a class statistics that will have years, list of int, public list of int years, and list of int values. Okay, and we're going to use here public statistics. That's what we're going to return. Get statistics. And we're going to have var result equals new statistics. That's cool. And we're going to take our let's var and eventually return the result. Okay, what does it want? Yeah, let's make it public. Okay, and here we're going to gather the years and their values. So let's use var count equals 0. Let's get orders dot orders. Let's have a business process. Let's sort by order dot date. Okay, and let's add a pp.groups.add after a yeah, we need to create a year over here. So let's not do this. Let's do last year. Var previous year. And we say bp for each row. If order date, orders.date dot year is different than previous year, then if previous year is not a 0, because we don't want the first one, then result.year.add orders order date dot year, and I will add it to the result, and the result dot values dot add orders dot order not orders will add the count. Okay, and then we'll say that the previous year is the current year and that the count is plus plus. Okay, so this code will iterate over all the orders and hopefully return an array with the years as we want them. Let's run this. Okay, bring back our console. Say helper.getStatistics, and we're gonna wait it because we want to wait for the result. And we see we got an array with results 1, 2, 97, 98. Let's check out our orders because it seems a little bit off. So we have orders from 96 and orders from 98 and 97. We are probably missing something. We also have a lot of orders in 98 and a lot in 97. So what have we missed? Yes, this should be outside of it. And we also need to add eventually the same over here. When we're done, we need to say statistics or result years dot add previous year and results values add the last count. Okay, because great. Let's run this. Get our console. Do it again. So we got an array here with 3 values, 97, 98, and 98. Yeah, because we got the wrong year over there. Let's fix. Here we need to add the previous year, not the current year. So this would work. Great. So now we should have the statistics working. So we see here we have values and years. Now let's go ahead and use that in our code, in our HTML code. So in our HTML, this all happens on the onload method, which is great, but we actually need it to happen even a little later. We need it to happen after this have registered. So I'm going to take this and put it here. Okay, because only after this has happened, it is ready for us. Only after it loaded the helper. Okay. And let's also make it async because we want to use await. And we're going to add over here stats equals await helper dot get statistics. And I'm going to be bold and say stats dot year and stats.value. Let's see if that works out for me. Yes, just like worked, but not. Okay, and what we need to do then is we want to debug this. So let's try to add a debugger definition over here. this will call Visual Studio to open the debugger when this happens. So here we are in our code. We see that we have the stats with the values over here. Okay. And I see that I've done value and not values over here, so that's empty. Stats is okay, but stats value is undefined, so I need to make it to values. Small mistake. I can afford it. Let's head over to Visual Studio, go back to our HTML and HTML and say here stats values. Cool. So we can proceed from here and we can see the values according to the years from our database, which I think is pretty cool. Let's just polish it for the last thing I want to do here. Let's remove the debugger so it will not look like that. And let's also hide the dev tools because we don't need that. And this is our result, which I think is pretty cool. Now here's the thing. Few things to consider here. First of all, don't run an external HTML. It's a great way to hack your application. Check out the C# documentation and see how you can put pre-compiled strings here. So compile your HTML and JavaScript and just return it over here as a strings that you get from the code. You don't want anyone to replace the HTML and hack your application. That's one note. Second note is, although I've done everything here in a single process, in many cases it makes sense to create a server and do API calls to it. Whatever makes sense for you, whatever works. I think that the benefit of the second approach is that it helps you gradually move towards a web application. It really depends on how much of the functionality you already completed. But for this short demo, we were able to show how we can call things in .NET from the menu. We've seen how we can call things and get the return value. And we've seen how we can get data from .NET. So I think this is all pretty cool. And on the final note, as backend developers, Winforms developers, I'm sure you have the same design capabilities that I do, which means pretty much none. Don't bother creating the HTMLs and CSS. Get someone else to do them for you and just plug in these wirings that you need when something happens. It's very easy to find HTML and CSS developer. You can use React, Angular, Vue, any framework that you work. Let them focus on on suffering from the designer or abiding to the designer rules, and let you focus on the business logic, which is the actual data-driven and calculation and business processes of the application, and interact like this. So everything that I've shown you so far made sense in the context of vanilla JS. But in real life you wouldn't work like that. You'll probably use some kind of framework. It can be React, it can be Angular, it can be Vue. And you'll also use an external team of developers to do these things for you. So let's go ahead and play with it and show you how to prepare for both scenarios. So the first thing I want to do is I will create a small React app. We can do, of course, also with Angular, but I'm going to do it with React, which is going to be npm create vit latest. I'll give it a project name, which really I don't care. I'm going to choose React and I'm going to choose TypeScript. Next, I'm going to enter the Vit project folder and install all the dependencies. And now I will hit code dot to open VS Code for me. So here I have VS Code. And the way VS Code works is in development, I will run a command called npm run dev, which will run the Vit development server on this port. And I can open it in a browser. So now I have the Vit development server open here. And I can change things and it will automatically refresh, which I think is pretty cool. Now, once we are done with the project, we're going to build it and it will create static files in the dist folder, which are the files that we'll use in production when we're going to run this app. So let's go ahead and enjoy that. So now let's also reference our Winforms application to this URL. So I'm going to head over to our Winforms code. And instead of using this static file, I'm going to use the URL for Vit. Now in reality, I'll probably have an if statement here saying if I'm in development, use this, and if I'm in production, use another folder. But for now, I'll just use this. Okay, so we have Vite running in our Northwind application. You see, we are with Northwind and everything. Let's go ahead and run it. And now, let's go ahead and go to VS Code, and we can see that if I make a change, it works. Great. Now, let's go ahead and connect the two. If you remember, in our HTML earlier, in our menu.html or demo.html, we had to initialize a C# with the helpers that we've created. So let's go ahead and copy that. And in our VS Code, we'll add a file called our app bridge, and I'll put this code over here. Now it doesn't know what C# is, so I'm going to declare a const C#, and I'm going to say, which is also is not going to like that, so I'm going to say here tsignore, which is also not going to like, and I'm going to ask him to ignore the tsignore for this file, because this is a bridge file. It will be creatively typed. Still our apps works, we haven't changed anything. The next thing I want to do is I want to add a button that will run a program. Okay, so if you look at our code, in our new menu helper, we have a button was clicked. So let's create a function, a button was clicked in TypeScript, and call it. How do we do that? We can do here export async function, a button was clicked. Remember that the first letter should be lowercase anyhow. And it will return a promise of void, which means it doesn't return anything. And here we will call return helper.aButton was clicked. Now it still doesn't know what helper is, so we'll declare const helper, and we'll also tell it to tsignore it as well. Now a button was clicked actually gets a string parameter in our code. We see it gets the text over here. So let's go ahead and define that here. We're going to say text string, and we're going to send it here. Great. And again, I want to see the app here. Now let's go to our app TSX. Let's add a button. We'll call it customers. Okay, yeah, let's add a div above that so it won't be that ugly. Cool, customers. And here I'll say on click a button was clicked, and I'll say customers. And let's see if it works. I clicked it, and we cannot see anything, which is real life. We need to always debug and see what's going on. Let's refresh it, and yeah. Okay, cool. Let's open the DevTools. We see that we need them. So we'll go back to our new menu, new menu view, and return the DevTools. And when we hit on customers, it doesn't do anything. I've missed something banal. Let's see, what have I missed? Let's do an alert here. Hey, wait, I see it's angry about something over there. No, okay. Alert. Ah, it does work. I don't know why I missed it. Aish. So I click here, and customers open. Perfect. And I can do another one with orders. And orders. And this will open orders, and this will open customers. Of course, I need to close the first one before the second one opens. Great. So you got that to work, and that's all cool. But our developers will not necessarily have our app to interact with. You know, we're going to externalize the React development for the React development team. So we need to be able to run also in the browser where we don't have our application. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. Let's have another look at the browsers that we had before. And if we refresh it, we see that it fails. And if we open the developer tools, it will fail because it doesn't have C#. Okay, C# only exists in the Windows application. So we can obviously say here only if window.C# runs C#. Okay, and of course TS ignore because we are cool, and now it does work here, but as soon as we click on button, it will get an error, and that's not really nice. So what I think I should do is I would create a variable called a return mock data, which would be false, and if it doesn't exist C#, I'm going to set it to true, and then in my method I'm going to say else return mock data equals true, and in my demo code I will say, okay, if return mock data alert menu opened with the name of the menu and return, only then call the helper method. So now our developers, when they'll click on customers, they will get a nice message and they can develop without having our app with them. And in our Winforms app, this will open the functionalities that we want. Okay, so that's kind of cool. Great. So we've done this, okay, and let's go ahead and do something more interesting, like getting the customer name. Okay, so in our code, in our Winforms code, we have the get customer name method, which catches a string and returns a string, and will create its equivalent in TypeScript. Okay, so again, here, export async function get customer name, customer ID, return promise of void, okay, and if return mock data, return name of plus customer ID, so the developers will have something to play with. Otherwise, return helper.get customer name of customer ID. Okay, and the promise that it returns, actually, you see it gives me an error because it returns a promise of string. Okay, perfect. So this is how they would get the customer name. Shall we implement that in React? It's a bit boring, but let's do that. So I need to have a const customer ID, set customer ID equals use state blank, and I'm gonna have another div over here. So it's gonna have an input, and it's gonna have a customer name. And the input value will be a customer ID, and the onChange will set the customer ID to the input value. Okay, and this is how you do recompute in React. You'll say use effect if customer ID changes, then get customer name of customer ID, then set customer name. Okay, so now if I'll do here alfki, I'll get the name of the customer. Okay, so that's how we do it with customer ID. Now, not all interactions are that simple. Receive a string or get a string and return a string. We sometimes return an object. If you remember the get statistics actually return the statistics object. So here's how you do that in TypeScript. We see we have the statistics, years, and values. So again, in our app bridge, I'm gonna export interface Okay, statistics. That's the object that will return. It has years and it has values. And then export async function get statistics. But now instead of promise void or string, it's going to be promise statistics. Okay, so if return mock data, then return something like this, and values 5, else return helper get statistics. Okay, and now let's use it in our HTML. So we're going to head over to our app TS6. We're going to add state for statistics. Use state of type statistics. Okay. And then I'm going to say once the component loads, when you have a use effect without a recompute list, it's just on load. And here I'll say get statistics, then set statistics. And let's add another div here with a UL and an LI. And we want the LI to happen for every row. So we're going to say statistics years.map. And we're going to get year and index. And we're going to return key year, value year. Okay, we have the list, and we're going to add this and head here statistics dot values position index. Yeah, that's not a good sign. Yeah, cool. So now we got the values there. And on our developers, okay, let's refresh, they get the test data. So again, they can work standalone without you bothering them. They can get it and see how it works. And you can create the mock code over here that will say how it would behave when they don't have the real data. And now that you're done and you are ready to deploy, the thing that you'll do is you'll say here npm run build, and this will tell Vite to build the project and place it in the dist folder. We can see here the index HTML and the different JavaScript. Now we need to configure the Ceph control to return these files whenever it's searching for this URL. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to switch over to our Visual Studio and to the new menu view. And I'm going to copy a code that I found online, and we're going to use it here. You can get it later from my GitHub repo. I placed it here, and what this code does is tells Ceph that whenever someone searches for a URL in the path that we'll give it here, return a file from the dist folder. So it will hijack the network calls and return the files before going to the network. And so let's configure it. We can say browser.request handler equals new custom request handler. We need to give it a URL, which is going to be this one, and the URL to get the dist folder from. So let's head over to VS Code, right click, copy path, switch back here and paste. Now I've chose here to get the files from the disk, from this folder. I recommend that in a real project, don't get the file from anywhere else, just get it from your code, from a resource, load it from a database that you trust. Otherwise someone can replace these HTMLs and JavaScript and do some kind of hacking. Now let's run the application. And we can see that the application works. It got the data from our database even without Vite running. So that's it. That's how you use it with React, and it's pretty similar with Angular or with Vue. Spent a considerable amount of time researching this. I hope you find this useful, and let me know in the comments if you have any other questions.